Hey buddy, it's Carm here, back on a nearly Thursday, and back on to show a few more spins from throughout the week. So I'll start right in. Something that I had learned of quite a while ago, and I don't even remember when I picked this up, but I don't know why I haven't gone so long without hearing it, but West of Memphis, original soundtrack by Nick Cave and Warren Ellis. I have Tink to thank directly for learning of this. She's played this, I think, over like a few years now in the background of her own videos, and I always wonder what is that, because there were so many different aspects to it, and it was very appealing. And it's a soundtrack between created by these two artists for a film that I still have yet to see, which I believe is about someone who was, I think, wrongly incarcerated, and a documentary on them. I think it was from 2012. It's on white vinyl, rare white vinyl album I have here. And a little hard getting it in there. There's the artists themselves. And Nick Cave and Warren Ellis, which I believe they've done quite a few soundtracks together over the years. And Nick Cave was someone I was somewhat familiar with, though I don't think I've heard much of his own music, and Warren Ellis was new to me, and still have yet to see the film, so kind of just going on what I'm hearing here. But very, very enjoyable. Have been intrigued ever since Tink had shown it and played it in her own videos. What strikes me right away is the contrast between a lot of the music is very, well, it's all instrumental. Seems dominated by piano, keyboards. Very subtle, the way the keyboards are approached. Almost kind of transparent. Maybe it's kind of mid to low end as far as tone. Kind of a string sound, as well as acoustic strings, bowed strings. Sounds like there's fiddle, maybe viola, as well as bass guitar. Sounds like possibly a little bit of a guitar. It's very interesting. The timbres from each instrument sound like they could be any other instrument, just the way they're very subtly approached and processed. Both kind of impressionistic and abstract in equal measure. Even at times, there's a very, very hard, almost kind of a harshness set against a soft, kind of dewdrops coming off of a leaf, with kind of an industrial feel. There's a piece called Scene of the Crime, which really has that feel to it. Something that's very kind of light and airy and beckoning, but also foreboding with kind of the harshness of the strings. And what I understand, the film is kind of that, what little I know of it, it kind of balances hope with that kind of foreboding and that kind of, dread, maybe sense of dread. But somehow it sounds like, just from what I could hear, they must capture it pretty well, because it sounds, on its own, it's really a nice, very evocative, which is, with soundtracks, sometimes it does sound incomplete if you haven't already seen the film, but on its own, it sounds very, definitely highlights that, but just a very expansive feel to it, almost to where it melds into the background, barely perceptibly, but still, there's still little things that jump out at you. The way the bass guitar is played at times has this kind of throbbing feel to it, even with everything else, which is kind of shadowy and just kind of lurking in the background, just kind of coming in every now and then, but never sounding obtrusive. Just a really nice, again, kind of blend of things, aspects that are a little bit harsher and darker with, I guess you could say, more hopeful themes. The final piece really struck me. A very beautiful melody played on fiddle. You really almost kind of romantic in a way, just kind of the way it leaves us off with something, again, hopeful. So really a beautiful album, something I think I could listen to many more times, and you'll hear little subtle things throughout. There's just so many little layers, yet again it's so, it's very subtle and really beautiful, and goes by in no time. Feels like it's a fairly short album, but really nice. And upon revisiting this, and makes me want to hear, because I think we've done several film scores together, and maybe see the films eventually. So yeah, West of Memphis, Nick Cave and Warren Ellis. So thank you, Tink, from all those, several years now of having that in the background, and yeah, definitely something I'm very much into. Next up, another duo here, Mama Rose, Archie Shepp on saxophones and voice, and Jasper Van Hoff on various keyboards. It's a concert from 1982 they did together on the Steeplechase record label, which I enjoy very much. And yeah, just several cuts on here. Kind of like the previous one, this is very interesting for its kind of contrasting aspects. Jasper, for the most part, is playing synthesizer on here. A little bit of acoustic and electric piano at times, but mostly synthesizer. A little bit of sequencer, or kind of laying down these little patterns of shifting chords where Archie will play over the top, improvising on saxophone. Starting out with contracts. It has that kind of, I think of music that has that kind of anthemic, almost like a sports highlight theme in slow motion. Kind of they're entering the field and you're kind of being introduced to them, as they come along. It kind of has that, there's, just a kind of inspiring, start to things. And with Archie soloing over the top, very raw, powerful approach on tenor sax. He's an artist I haven't explored nearly enough. I've only heard bits and pieces over the years, but someone with a very distinctive style. And Jasper, in a few other contexts, always very interesting. Mama Rose is an Archie reciting his own poetry of that title, dedicated to his grandmother. And speaking of his own experiences growing up and the things he'd gone through in the 60s and witnessed around him. And I don't know, I might be the only person who actually maybe hears this in the music. His approach, reading the poem, which is really a mixture of spoken and sung, almost in kind of an incantation, like a gospel style in a way. And the contrast blend with Jasper synthesizers kind of reminds me of Klaus Schulze and Arthur Brown. Their collaborations from just before this, in the late 70s. It goes off of Dune and live album. Something about, and the lyrics are kind of a surreal, somewhat surreal, abstract quality, which I don't know, just brings to mind that collaboration. So I don't know, I might be the only person who hears that, but yeah, that's Mama Rose. And then Pipo to start the second side. It's again dominated by Jasper's synthesizers. A little more sequencer based on here. A little more variation with his soloing. Does a lot of nice soloing. Yeah, playing a PPG synthesizer and computer. Yeah, just various, prepared organ. So he's kind of pulling out all the stops keyboard-wise. With again Archie coming on sax and improvising over the top. Again, providing that kind of a foil of something more raw and more immediate to maybe something a little more refined to what Jasper's doing is a little more refined. So interesting hearing those kind of the way they kind of meld into each other, contrasting but complementary as well. It's just really interesting blend. Kalimba is mostly kalimba being played by Jasper, and Archie the second half of the piece coming in on soprano sax and kind of going back and forth. Real short piece, and finally ends with Recovered Residence by Jasper. For the most part, it's solo piano, going through a variety of styles, different improvisatory styles. You could hear everything from stride to a little bit of almost like Debussy piano, somehow blending it in a very short time, making it seamless. And then Archie coming in on sax and then kind of almost doing this kind of interesting kind of blues workout towards the end, and then it just ends again as quickly as it began. Just seamless, the way they approached this together. And yeah, makes me want to explore a little more from both of them. I don't know what other collaborations they've done together, but this is really a very interesting one, and I think a little bit different for both artists from what I've heard. So yeah, Mama Rose from Archie Shepp and Jasper Van Toff. And for the third one here, we have a Revelation by Carlos Guido, maybe? Not quite sure. Carlos was in the group Neuronium. I believe he's a founding member along with Michel Huygen. Carlos himself from Spain. The group Neuronium was based in Spain. I think Michel Huygen is Belgian originally, but they were based there since from the 70s. Carlos himself, late lamented, he passed on about 9 or 10 years ago. Synthesist, guitarist. You could hear the influence, of course, of the group, Neuronium, as well as a little bit of, other aspects of German, I could say like German electronic music of the time, a little bit of French progressive, kind of blended in there. The first piece, the title cut Revelation, joined by Jose Maria Cedilla on drums. I like the approach with drums and synthesizer on here. Sometimes, and you hear it on certain Klaus Schulze albums from the 70s, sometimes the drums, that rhythm or just the sound of the instrument maybe detracts a little bit from the synthesizers, where you're kind of focusing on the rhythm rather than the textures and the harmonies of what you're hearing. But on here it actually blends in pretty nicely. It doesn't it's not too much overwhelming and overall, and just comes right in. Very powerful statement, very upbeat, and kind of an optimistic sound. A different kind of depth than what you would get to that title, Revelation. Yeah, just a real nice kind of arresting opener. And then you go into Devil Times, and you can see the variety of synthesizers he plays on here. Just various, a lot of different tones and textures. Starting off quite surreal and dark, and even a little twisted, with some vocals, which almost sounds like a kind of chanting, by Manolo Torres, who plays drums, percussion, and voice. And eventually kind of settles into kind of a light kind of drone, and with a little bit of a sequencer backdrop, just kind of settling into the piece and going into a little less darker territory, maybe brightening up. It's almost like they're going through a cave and they're kind of reaching the light, at the end of it. And yeah, it's a nice. You hear a lot of different aspects of what he's doing on just that one piece. Stretching out with just various tones and colors. Stonehenge is a really neat piece. He's joined by Jose and Manolo playing percussion, a combination of congas and timbales. So you really hear something rhythmically and texturally adding something different to what again is kind of that the European space music style of that time, late 70s and early 80s, but adding that percussion, giving it a whole nother dimension, kind of bringing the space a little bit down to earth, and hearing other recognizable music forms, different kind of Latin music. You could almost say like if Santana went really, really out, it might be what you have in that piece. And the triangle is really neat for being pretty much all acoustic. There's vibraphone and Carlos playing acoustic guitar with some effects. Very pretty, kind of somewhat of a chamberish piece, a little bit like what's in the background here, and a little bit of a nice diversion and contrast from the rest of the album, which is very spacey and synth-oriented. Then you have Walking Across the Garden of Your Mind, the longest piece on the album. You see all the instrumentation, really pulling it all out on here. Beautiful, billowing, shimmering drone to start off, just really mesmerizing. You just imagine a very long, large landscape in front of you. Everything is going in slow motion. You're kind of weightless as you're traveling through it. And then, the further you go, a little more complex it gets. The landscape is starting to vary and speed up a little bit. And the sequencer comes in, and it almost really sounds like, I wouldn't say overall this sounds like Tangerine Dream or Klaus Schulze or the associated artists, but if you like them, you like this album and this piece in particular. You hear just so much in there. traveling through this landscape. And it's interesting, the drums don't come in until towards the end of the piece. Not so much as it builds up, but as it's almost kind of coming down a little bit, the drums come in, and then it's a very kind of soft landing. So very interesting the way the instrumentation is used and approached, not always in the expected way. And then you have a theme for a silent world, which is a beautiful kind of really, it does sound like you're sailing off into the sunset. Just a really nice nice slow gradual end to the journey, just kind of kind of laying you down gently, even with that slight surrealism to it. So just reminding you that you've safely landed, but it's still a little bit uncertain, which is what I like about this sort of thing overall. And just those little contrasts in general. So Carlos Guido. I don't know if I showed the label. PDI. I don't think he made very many solo albums. Neuronium's made a lot of albums as a group, and I think Michel Huygen made a lot of solo albums, but I don't think he made very many. This is his first one, and excellent. And again, if you like that kind of electronic and something with a more of that kind of contrast with the acoustic and the electronic, definitely recommend it. Revelation. So yeah, I'm going to share a few more here. And in the background, a wonderful gift that George had sent. Thank you once again for this. Yeah, the Masayoshi Fujita. Listened to this probably half a dozen times already, and really enjoying this a lot. It's in a way it's kind of what I was expecting. This kind of chamber, the strings and the vibes, really indefinable, beautiful stuff. Definitely recommend checking this out. So thank you once again, and hope you're all doing as well as possible. Just doing a lot of listening and going through things. So hope you're all as well, and to the next one, from the director and I, who's been here almost the whole time. Peace, love, and joy.